Ladies and gentlemen, with this particular story, we are talking again about police officers. In this case, I'm a little bit conflicted about how I feel about this because I felt like one officer caused this entire problem and the other two were just trying to get their buddy, their partner, because they look at this like a brotherhood when they talk about the blue wall and all of that kind of good stuff. But they looked at it as our brother's in trouble for something. Let's try to figure out what we can do to fix it. And they all end up getting in trouble, some big time trouble. If you guys look at this individual on my screen, this is an individual who has actually become very famous on social media, on YouTube, because he goes very hard. Excuse me. He goes very hard at people who commit crimes. So if you have not ever seen him or heard him talk before, his videos have gone viral quite a few times. I saw them, they had like millions of views. But let's talk about this. It's out of Polk County, Florida, and the Polk County Sheriff's Office says that 3 of their deputies are facing charges for evidence tampering in relation to a December arrest. Now, according to a press release, the 3 deputies who y'all just saw on my screen, let me see if I can get them back up there, right there, were arrested Friday night after an investigation began on March the 15th. The deputies, let me get their names up here. Right here. The deputies are John Resignation, 24 years old, Jamal Lawson, who's 29 years old, and Garrett Cook, who's 26 years old. Sheriff Judd, who y'all just saw on my screen, let me just get Sheriff Judd back up here. That's Sheriff Judd right there. Sheriff Judd said the investigation into the deputies started on March 15th when a suspect who was arrested on December 21st called about missing a cell phone and about $723 in cash money. Not related to the label. Judge said that the suspect was originally arrested during a traffic stop in Winter Haven in which Resignation, on the left, conducted a traffic stop. Cook and Lawson were the ones who responded as his backup. The suspect was arrested after drugs and cash were found in the vehicle and on her person, according to the press release. Resignation documented the drugs and the cash in his report from the arrest. 2 days after the arrest, a release says Resignation submitted 13 items into evidence, but the cash was not one of them. He got 13 problems, but the cash ain't one, right? According to Judd, the deputy said they realized a few days after the arrest that the money was missing and decided to replace it with their own money. Aha! Aha! That's a problem. So money was taken, money disappeared, and so they were trying to cover and replace that money because they knew all 3 of them are on the line. Their jobs are on the line, their asses are on the line. So they tried to replace the money. Judd said that never happened and the deputies never reported the money missing to their superiors. Judd said officials don't believe the money was ever lost, but that one of the 3 men took it and stole it. The sheriff said he doesn't know which one, but added that it appears Resignation, who is that guy, it appears that Resignation had the money last before it disappeared. Judd said that he was mad beyond words. They risked everything over a little bit, a tiny bit of money. And I got to tell you guys, there's 2 problems with that. First of all, in the normal world, $723 is not enough to risk your entire life, your entire livelihood, and especially if you're talking about 3 grown-ass adults and probably fathers. Let me break this down for you. We'll show you how this works. $723 divided by 3 is $241 a piece. Can somebody please type that in the live chat? And while we're live, please click that thumbs up, share the stream, let more people know that we're live talking about this story. $241 a piece. $241 a piece. If you split that down the middle, that's nothing to risk your life over. Even $723 ain't, there's no amount of money I don't think is worth risking your life over. Nothing. But in this case, it's even less than nothing. But let's move on. If we're going to hold the community accountable, we're going to hold ourselves even more accountable, which I do like that he said that. And I want you guys to also remember this. Police officers aren't working with a large budget to begin with, and that does not excuse them stealing money or taking advantage when they see they can take advantage of criminals. I don't like that. That's wrong in every facet. So let me clarify. But that's also a further reason why we should also not de-incentivize people to do their jobs properly. Hashtag don't defund the police. Because you're asking, when you defund the police, you're asking them to do their jobs for less money to the same exact standards that they were doing their jobs for more money before. And that's not right to do that to anybody. How many of you guys would go to your job, work 40 hours, but they tell you they're going to take 35% less money? They're going to take 35% of your money out of your check, but want you to perform to the same standards. How many of you guys are going to just sit back and be like, all right, cool, no problem? It's a twofold problem. Twofold problem. All I'm saying is that the incentive is bad on both sides. But let's move on. According to the release, after the suspect contacted the sheriff's office on March 15th, detectives found a supplemental report Resignation created on March the 16th, which wasn't that long ago, adding the cash as an item of evidence. Wow. The release says Resignation used Cook's login information, who's the guy on the right-hand side, to fraudulently sign the report as if Cook was an official witness. Damn. After the suspect contacted the sheriff's office, the press release says Resignation called Lawson. Then Lawson sent Resignation $500 through Cash App. And the plan was for Resignation to add the remaining $223 of his own money and submit it to evidence. That attempt failed, and Lawson asked for the money back, according to the release. Dumb, dumber, and dumbest. Can somebody type that in the chat? Dumb, dumber, and dumbest. That should have been the latest movie. Dumb, Dumber, and Dumbest. 3 stupid ass dummies. Anyway, the investigation was started after a PCSO property and evidence officer reported a suspicious phone call from Resignation on March the 15th. Now, according to the press release, Resignation called the officer at work and asked this woman to call him on his personal cell phone because this dude knew that those calls would be recorded. So he wanted to get off the record to do some illegal shit. That guy. The officer reported the call to her supervisor, who reported it to Resignation sergeant. Rightfully so. Because I'm sorry, don't ask me to risk my life and my career for your stupid mistakes over $723. Resignation sergeant asked him about the call and the missing money. Now, according to the release, Resignation said that he and Lawson were going to make it right. They were going to make it right together by submitting their own money. The sergeant told Resignation to take no other action, and the internal investigation started. Now, Lawson, Cook, and Resignation were all interviewed on March the 19th, just about, 10 days ago? Lawson confirmed that the money was removed during the initial arrest and gave conflicting stories on where it was placed after being seized, according to authorities. Now, Cook also confirmed that the money was removed and said he last saw the bag of evidence sitting in the trunk of a vehicle, but didn't say which vehicle. The release says when Resignation told Cook a few days after the arrest that the money was missing, Cook said they should tell their sergeant, but Resignation was worried about getting in trouble. Authorities say Cook knew over the next few months of the plan to replace the money, but took no steps to stop it, which is why his ass is in super hot water. Dumb, dumber, and dumbest. Resignation also confirmed the details of the original arrest. Now, authorities say he told them Lawson took the evidence and he took the suspect to jail. He told the detectives the next day he noticed that the money was missing and said that the three searched for it but could not find it, so they created a plan to replace it. He also admitted using Cook's password to fake the witness signature on the supplemental report he created on March the 16th. Now, Cook, let me see if I can get their names back up here so you can know who's who. Cook, who's right there in the middle, is charged with conspiracy to commit tampering with evidence for conspiring with Lawson and Resignation and unlawful tampering or fabricating evidence, F3. Let's go back. Lawson, the black guy, is charged with conspiracy to commit tampering with evidence for conspiring with Cook and Resignation and unlawful tampering or fabricating evidence, F3. Official misconduct for knowingly and intentionally causing another person to falsify an official record to cover up the loss of evidence, F3. And tampering or fabricating evidence by transferring money to Resignation by way of Cash App, knowing it to be unlawfully submitted as evidence, F3. Last but not least, Mr. Resignation, who caused all of this, who might have actually done the world a favor by creating this situation, and then we got three bad cops out of the way. So this area out there, where's this area at? In Florida and Polk County. This whole situation has caused us to be able to get three bad officers off the force and in jail in Polk County. So Resignation is charged with conspiracy to commit tampering with evidence for conspiring with Lawson and Cook in unlawful tampering or fabricating evidence, F3, official misconduct for knowingly and intentionally falsifying an official record to cover up for the loss of evidence, F3, tampering or fabricating evidence by obtaining money to submit into evidence, knowing it to be unlawfully submitted, forgery or forging another deputy's signature to his report, F3, lastly, uttering forged instrument for publishing as true a false and forged record, F3. Now, Resignation and Lawson were hired by the department as detention deputies in 2017, and both later transferred to deputy sheriffs that same year. Cook, who was hired as a deputy sheriff in 2016. Sheriff Grady Judd said Lawson and Cook were also members of the SWAT team, which means they would have had a lot more responsibility on their hands and could have potentially been around a lot more money and a lot more drugs and a lot more responsibility. All of the deputies have resigned from the department when they were arrested on March 19th. So if they resign, which sounds like a fourth to resign, if they resign, then that means they don't get any monetary benefits. They don't get any type of paid while the investigation is going. They get nothing. They basically quit. When you quit, you get no money. Judd added that the charges against the suspect in the initial case have all been dropped, and she will get her money back. How about that? All of the drugs she had go away. She don't get no charges because they damn sure don't want to get sued to high hell behind this. We give you guys the fair usage. Federal law allows citizens to reproduce, distribute, or exhibit portions of copyrighted motion pictures, videotapes, or video discs under certain circumstances without the authorization of the copyright holder. This is called fair use. It is allowed for purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody, which doesn't infringe of copyright under 17 U.S.C. 107. And again, I want to remind you guys, the police officers did not get fired. I repeat, they did not get fired. They resigned. They quit. Therefore, they get no pay.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. On the first day of employment at the Sheriff's Office, and we hire once a month, I meet with the men and women, and I said I expect you to be honest, ethical, and moral all the time. I expect you to treat people like you'd want your mother treated, and if you do that, you'll have a wonderful career here. And then I go on to explain that, you know, if you work for a fast food restaurant and they catch you sliding pizzas out the back door to their friends, they will terminate your employment and run you off. But there's a difference. If we find you violating the law at the Sheriff's Office, we will also terminate your employment, but we will lock you up in the county jail. We're held to a higher standard. You can't police a community if you don't hold yourself to a higher standard than you expect of the people from the community. Then I look at them and I say, do you understand what I said? And I have them all say, yes, sir, I understand. These folks forgot. They forgot what they were taught. They obviously didn't pay any attention to my warning. And as a result, we locked these 3 deputies up on Friday night. And here's how it started. These 3 folks were on our crime suppression team. We were receiving complaints and actually fears of gang activity and narcotics activity in a community, and they were sent there to try to keep the community safe, stop the narcotics dealing, and as a result, break up the gang activity. While patrolling in the Winter Haven or the Central District area, they came upon a suspect who ran a red light, John Resignation, who has been with us for about 3.5 years, stopped the vehicle. He was backed up by Jamal Lawson and Garrett Cook. When they stopped, they asked for permission to search the vehicle, which was denied, which is traditionally what our suspects do. We called a canine. The canine did a search and alerted to drugs. They searched the vehicle and they found in the trunk of the vehicle marijuana and alprazolam, controlled substances. So they arrested the suspect, and in the suspect's pocket, it was a female. She had more marijuana in small quantities and $723. When they wrote in their affidavit to put her in jail, and John Resignation was the arresting deputy, they wrote that they seized a large quantity of cash. So they wrote it in the arrest affidavit, and they also wrote it in their initial report. So this was on the 21st of December. They take the suspect to jail. They have a day off. They come back to work on the 23rd of December, where John writes his report, and he processes evidence, and he puts several pieces of evidence into property and evidence. But they don't put any cash, any money, into property and evidence. What the 3 of them talk about on the 23rd is, uh-oh, the money's missing. They counted it, all 3 of them at some point in time counted the money and determined it was $723. And then I'll fast forward to the investigation. Rosinsky said Lawson had the money. Lawson said he didn't have the money. Rosinsky had the money, and Garrett Cook said I never had the money, but they all admitted counting the money. So they decided on the 23rd of December, we've really got a problem here. We're missing money. We've lost the $723. They decided at that point what they would do is they would all kick in and replace the money, which is inappropriate, by the way. But they never did. And they did not go to their supervisor and say, we lost the money. So time goes on. Rosinsky even has a conversation and says, you know, I'm afraid before this is over with, I'm going to get arrested for theft. So they still do nothing. Now let's advance into March, when our suspect's felony charges are reduced to misdemeanor possession of marijuana. Once that happens, our suspect calls Property and Evidence and said, hey, I'd like to have my cell phone and my money back. She said it was somewhere under $730. She didn't know exactly how much. Property and Evidence refers her back to the district and to the supervisors where the event occurred. She calls and talks to what we call the RID, Regional Intake Detective. That detective was filling in actually for the RID detective, and she said, look, I would like my money back. So he looks, he pulls up the reports, and he says, we'll get back to you. He calls Rosinsky and says, I don't see any money here. Rosinsky gets panicked. Rosinsky starts talking to his buddies, and I'm giving you the 30,000-foot view because, and you can see in the press release, they have different versions of this conversation. In the meantime, Rosinsky also calls down to P&E, Property and Evidence. The Property and Evidence lady goes, no, there's no mention of any money in any of that property and evidence that was seized and ultimately we have. But the Property and Evidence lady went forward and searched all around to see if maybe a piece of evidence got logged by mistake under the wrong case number, and she found none. And then Rosinsky says, when he called the lady at P&E, he said, call me back on your personal cell phone. So they had this conversation, and he said, did anybody hear you talking to me? Just forget this conversation occurred. She hangs the phone up, and she says to herself, self, that doesn't sound right. So she goes to her sergeant. Her sergeant goes to Rosinsky's sergeant. Rosinsky's sergeant calls him in and goes, what is this all about? The money. Don't worry about it, Sarge. We got it covered. I'm writing a supplement report. And the sergeant says, stop. I don't know what you're talking about, but stop what you're doing. Everybody did what was right when it came to their attention by our suspect, who is now the victim of a theft. But these three folks. So our Rosinsky sergeant gets with his supervision. We start a criminal investigation immediately. This all happens from last Monday. Last Monday's when the lady made the initial request for her money back. We do an investigation, and our detectives and supervisors are simply the very best, did what they were supposed to do. When they saw something that wasn't right, they immediately investigated. And within 5 days of this being first brought to our attention and us sorting through and talking to the supervisors and the P&E and completing an investigation, on Friday night, we locked all three of these deputies up. Now, I can tell you I've been with the sheriff's office my entire adult life. And from memory, I can only remember 2 other occasions in almost 50 years where we've arrested more than 1 deputy at a time, and that was, both of those occasions were back in the 1970s. This is the first time ever that we criminally charged 3 deputies, and it wasn't just for the event, it was for the cover-up. They attempted a cover-up, and they all 3 committed criminal charges or criminal violation of Florida statutes. Let it be clear that I commend everyone from the suspect who made the initial report to the property and evidence lady who said this call's not right, to the supervisors on the ground when they first became aware, to the investigating supervisors and command staff for doing the right thing, because that's what we do here, the right thing. If this group of people had done the right thing, we would have done the right thing. They did the wrong thing, we still did the right thing. We locked them up and in jails where they belong. So let me give you some background. As a result of this horrific, totally illegal, in violation of all the policies, conduct, we will go back to each of these folks and audit every report they ever wrote that dealt with an arrest or seizure of any property. It will take us some period of time. And here's my promise to the community, and here's my promise to these 3 folks. If we find evidence of any other criminal event, we will go back to your house and we will arrest you again and we will put you in jail. At this point in time, obviously, we've not had time to do that audit because we were working all week long on arresting them in the first place. But we took this a step further. Command staff from the sheriff's office, supervisors from the sheriff's office, contacted the state attorney's office and requested that the criminal charges against the suspect be dropped because we can't vouch for their credibility any longer. We also promised to the state attorney's office that we would audit their case reports and the cases they've made, and certainly that will be a decision by the state attorney's office as to whether they accept their testimony on any pending cases. But I am mad beyond words that these 3 folks have impugned their reputation, and more importantly, of the other 1,000+ deputies that work here with their criminal conduct. I'm going to request, when I have a conversation with our state attorney, that if there's any negotiated pleas, it all requires them to spend some period of time in jail. In Polk County vernacular, I'm pissed. They know it. I want the community to know it. We've also made arrangements through our now victim to not only drop the charges, but we will be working with our legal affairs department and our finance department to give her her money back. And certainly we'll go back as part of any criminal prosecution on them to try to get us reimbursed. We don't know where the money is. We highly suspect that one of the 3 of them stole it, that it was never lost. We think that's just a lie along the way. But which of the 3 of them ultimately got the money, we don't know. It appears to us from everything we can put together from all of these convoluted stories that John Resignation was the last one with the money before it disappeared. and you just don't lose $723 in small bills. So I'm pretty hot about that, as you can well imagine. Well, Michaela Butler, who's 25 and a detention deputy, she decides to go to some kind of an event over the weekend down south with some friends, and she gets arrested for DUI. She's a detention deputy. She was driving erratically on State Road 31 in DeSoto County. She ran off of the roadway. She crossed back over the center line, and a deputy from DeSoto County stopped her. I applaud the deputy for enforcing the law and taking her into custody for driving under the influence. She is suspended pending investigation, and obviously if our investigation supports their investigation, that's also a termination event. I've said it a lot. I'll say it again. We enjoy trust from this community because we hold our deputies accountable and to a higher standard. I appreciate the fact that our deputies and supervisors and employees, support staff, as soon as they got information about wrongdoing, they brought it to our attention, and we're always going to do the right thing. And this is one more exception, or one more example of doing the right thing. So with that, do you have any questions? I don't know what else I can tell you. I've told you everything that I know. Yes, ma'am.
I know that you said John Rosignation was with the department for 3.5 years. The other two, do you have?
Jamal was with the department 3.5 years, and Garrett Cook 5 years. Okay. Garrett Cook and Jamal Lawson were also on the SWAT team.
Sheriff, do you believe that money was drug money that the woman had on her, or you have no way to prove any of that?
Well, that was the original charges because it was in small bills, and small bills are what we see on street sales of drugs. However, once again, that money was taken from her and never made into property and evidence. And it's the craziest thing in the world because they wrote in their report that they took the money. They wrote in the affidavit that they took the money, and then they didn't put the money in evidence. It just makes no sense. Initially, you would think, well, missing money, maybe it's true. Well, if it was true, all they had to do was go to their sergeant and say, we lost the money, we dropped the money, whatever, little bird got the money. But that's not what happened. They had this grand conspiracy from the day they discovered it missing. Well, I suggest to you, it's not missing, it's stolen. And we're not absolutely sure which of the three got it. We suspect the strongest that John, because he was the last one seen with the money. But at the end of the day, makes no difference. They're all in trouble. They're all arrested. They all resigned. We didn't have to go through the termination process with them. They resigned on Friday night upon their arrest.
Sheriff, did they say they were sorry or anything like that?
They said a lot of things when we put those handcuffs on them. They found out getting handcuffs put on you is not near as exciting as putting handcuffs on people who commit crime. But our detectives were really pleased to put handcuffs on the three of them.
Sheriff, it seems like a lot of risk for such a relatively small amount of money.
They didn't just risk their job, they risked their reputation, they risked any future opportunities to work in law enforcement, they risked everything over a tiny amount of money.
Hey, can you talk about how it feels, I guess, for you all, because now what if people are hesitant about other officers doing this?
Well, do you know, you're exactly right. There's always going to be a few people going, I told you. Well, here, let me tell you something. the system worked. The checks and balance worked. And you can suspect people, and that's people, but I can tell you clearly and unequivocally, I've got over 1,000 deputies here working in detention, law enforcement, and the courts. I've got support staff working here that are honest, ethical, moral, and they do the right thing every day. And every time, without exception, we find someone that violates the law, we investigate them, and we arrest them. And I go a step further. I hold a press conference. We're going to be transparent. I could have arrested them and then hoped that you didn't hear about it. That's not the way we do things here. We lead from the front. If we're going to hold this community accountable, we're going to hold ourselves more accountable.
And as for auditing the reports, how long could that possibly take? I know you said a period of time, but it seems like a lot.
Well, two of them has 3.5 years of experience and one has 5 years experience. Fortunately, things are computerized. So we'll go in and all of their calls for service don't require an arrest or a seizure. So we'll start at the top and work backwards. And if it takes, 3 months, 6 months, however long it takes, that's just how long it'll take. But we want to make sure that we're comfortable with there's not been another episode of this. And if there has been, they'll be held accountable for that as well. But that's the only way we can be comfortable, and that's the only way the community can be comfortable, is for us to do a complete and thorough audit of all of their work. And it'll be a much easier than it would have been back in the day because everything's computerized.
You said that at one point they tried to replace the money, kick in and replace the money, which obviously you said is inappropriate. Did they ever do that, or did they just say they were going to?
Well, Jamal Lawson, within the last week when this thing started scurrying around, he sent Resignation $500 through his Apple Pay. Resignation obviously had to put it in his account because that's how it moves. Resignation was doing a supplement report, and he also dummied up a swear-to, that's part of his criminal charges, a swear-to affidavit, and that's when we said time out. So whether or not he would have put the money in evidence or not, we don't know, because he never had a chance to, because we stopped it. We were involved in it. So Jamal is out $500 more that Resignation has in his account. But we'll let them deal with that. We're dealing with the criminal part. I don't know, maybe Jamal will want to come back and file a theft charge on him later if he doesn't get his $500 back. We'll take the report. We'll file another charge. But right now it appears to be a civil engagement involved in the middle of a criminal event. Anything else? If we find that they have violated other criminal charges, we'll send out another press release. Thank you. God bless you. We'll see you next time.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want y'all to hear what they just said before, and I'm going to give y'all my closing thoughts. Since they've been hired, they're going to audit every single arrest that they have ever made. Any traffic stop, anything. Wow. If there's any little thing wrong in there, if anybody made any complaints, any little thing, they're going to be held accountable for everything, every little tiny thing that they've done wrong. And again, I want y'all to remember that this was over the smallest amount of money. But this is a microcosm of a bigger problem. See, the problem that we have in America is that we tend to risk everything for nothing. That's an American problem. It's not even a police problem, because we do that in Shoot, they do that in the corporate world. You've heard of embezzlement, right? You've heard of that in the hood. You've heard of that in police departments. That's a societal problem. That's bigger than police. That's bigger than the hood. Corporate people do it as well. And they risk their lives over this money. And it's just not worth it. There's ways of being successful in America and making money. And I think that what we need to do is we need to educate ourselves about better ways of being able to generate the things that we want in a legal way. Okay? And unless we want to change the laws. But nonetheless, that still doesn't excuse what they did. Again, I want people to remember, don't de-incentivize your police. Don't ask them to do the same work and then pay them less. Hashtag, do not defund the police. Because then that's going to create an even greater problem. And when pressure builds up, pressure will bust pipes, and it might cause some good police officers to do some bad things and make some horrible choices. And we want to give them more incentive to do the right thing as opposed to putting them in places where their mind shouldn't be. And if you ask me, if you're going to call me up and ask me to risk my life for you every day, I'd like to be compensated for it. Right? We should not be defunding police, regardless of if they catch these three stooges, aka snap, crackle, and pop. I don't know which one is which, but nonetheless, what they did was not worth it. $241 multiplied by 3 people, $700 something dollars. It's never going to be worth it. They're going to regret that for the rest of their lives. And sometimes there's just some things that you just can't get past, and that's going to be on their record forever. Y'all remember, like Stephon Clark said? I don't know how I brought him up in this. But that is going to hold them accountable for the rest of their lives forever. Just ain't worth it. But again, shout out to Sheriff Judd. I love watching him, and I like his no-nonsense approach to doing the right thing. And I hope it continues to keep making people feel a sense of shame and walk that very thin line and do the right damn thing. Because it's only, in my opinion, it's only right and wrong. No room really in between there, okay? But hopefully you guys listen with an open mind and an open heart, okay? Thank you guys so much for listening to this story, and we hope to see you guys on the next stream, okay? I'm DJ Just J. We're the AFC, and we advocate for children first. So make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you would, please hit that thumbs up. See you on the next stream, all right? Have a great night. Have a great day. Peace.